Are you ever asked to prove who you are, while your own history waits in your pocket? The clerk scoffed, her voice clicking like the typewriter behind her, and the room laughed before falling still. A paper badge soft as cloth caught the morning light as it trembled once. Somewhere a ceiling fan groaned and his heartbeat matched its rhythm. Still, he straightened his coat, eyes steady on the judge's bench. Quiet men leave echoes, too. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and polish, like something kept clean but not quite alive. Harold Wexler stood in line beneath the whir of an old ceiling fan hat, tucked under one arm, the other hand folded over a paper badge so soft it felt like fabric. His thumb traced the frayed edge the way he used to when waiting for orders half a lifetime ago. Ahead, the clerk adjusted her glasses. Next, he stepped forward. The badge trembled once in his palm. "Name Harold Wexler," he said, voice steady. She typed with quick, efficient clicks. Reason for appearance, he nodded toward the small summons folded in his pocket. Parking notice. It said to verify identification. Her eyes flicked up, then down again. "Let's see your ID." He handed it over. The laminate was clouded edges lifting. The clerk squinted. "Sir, this ID expired 30 years ago." The words landed sharp and dry. Behind him, someone exhaled a quiet laugh. The judge, a younger man with a tidy haircut and impatience for breakfast, looked up from the bench. "Is that correct, Mr. Wexler?" Harold met his eyes. "That's the last one they issued before the base closed, Your Honor." The judge tilted his head. "Base, yes, sir. Fort Alton, maintenance crew." The clerk leaned toward the bench, voice low but carrying. "We're supposed to have current identification." The judge sighed. "Rules are rules. Do you have anything newer driver's license?" "No, sir. Stopped driving years ago." A pause. The hum of the fan filled the space. The clerk whispered again. "Maybe he could just get a new one." "Maybe," the judge said, still watching Harold. "But that's not up to me." Harold's fingers tightened around the paper badge. "I was told to bring proof that—" The clerk gestured. "That's a souvenir." He looked down at it, creased faintly golden from the years, an emblem of a winged wrench and faded letters, Service Crew A11. "I suppose it is," he said quietly. "But it's the only proof that lasted." The judge shifted his papers. "Mr. Wexler, we can't verify an expired document." Something in Harold's shoulders drew straighter, a memory of standing inspection when the tools had to gleam. He nodded once. "Understood." The clerk turned back to her screen. "We'll have to mark this as non-compliant." He waited for the pen to stop scratching. Then the younger man behind him, a courier by the look of the cap, muttered just loud enough. "Maybe you were someone once." The words hung there. Harold didn't answer. He only placed the paper badge flat on the counter, its worn edge catching the light. For a moment, no one moved. The clerk swallowed, suddenly unsure what to type next. The fan clicked once overhead. A shoe tapped in the hallway. A paper shuffled. Harold reached for the badge again, sliding it back into his pocket with care. "Thank you for your time." The judge hesitated, something like apology crossing his face, but said nothing. Harold stepped aside, slow but upright, as if the air itself required discipline to move through. The diner door chimed like a memory trying to be polite. Harold Wexler eased himself into his usual corner booth, the one facing the window where the courthouse dome blinked through the morning haze. May, who'd run the place since gas was 30 cents, poured coffee before he even asked. "Rough morning, Harold," she said. He managed half a smile. Just the kind where rules get younger every year. Steam lifted from the cup, a slow breath of patience. Across the counter, a young public defender from the courthouse leafed through a stack of forms, his tie loosened, but his voice sharp. Old guy in front of me thought his badge could pay the fee. He thinks respect comes with receipt paper. May's brow tightened. She didn't look over. You don't say. Harold kept his eyes on the coffee, swirling the spoon once. The defender kept talking loud enough for his own amusement. Told him, "Sir, the law doesn't honor nostalgia." Guess I'm still learning bedside manners. May finally turned. "Son, there's a thing called listening before talking." "Coffee refill." He blinked. Sure." She refilled his cup with the precision of someone who'd seen too many mornings. Then she walked to Harold's booth. "On the house," she said. He shook his head. "No, ma'am. You already keep my seat warm." May smiled soft. "That badge in your pocket still means something." He paused, then pulled out his wallet. The paper badge rested inside, folded neat. Behind it, an envelope corner showed a navy letter yellowed at the edges. "Old thing," he murmured. She nodded toward it. "Doesn't look done speaking." He didn't answer, only traced the crease where a line of ink peeked through. To Chief Technician Wexler. The young defender, realizing the quiet wasn't in his favor, rose with his papers. "Anyway, gotta run. Courts run on coffee, not justice." May gave a polite half-laugh. "You said it, honey." When the door closed behind him, the diner felt bigger. Harold exhaled. He's not wrong about the coffee part. May wiped her hands on a towel. Maybe, but some things brew longer for a reason. She nodded at the letter. "You keeping that close for proof or for company?" He folded the wallet. "Little of both." The bell above the door jingled again. Sunlight cut through the window like a gentle verdict. "World moves fast," May said. "You just keep steady." He looked at her grateful without words. "Appreciate that." The lunch crowd began to murmur in the back booths. Harold set $1.75 on the counter, exact change as always. May tried to wave it off. "Next time, coffee's mine." "Rules are rules," he said with a small grin. "Sure," she replied, "but not all of them need keeping." He gave a quiet nod, pocketed his wallet, and slid from the booth. At the door he paused. The letter's edge caught against the wallet fold like it wanted to breathe. Minnie Cliff. He folds the letter like evidence not yet called. May watched him go, the door chime fading into the hum of noon. For a moment she stood still, witness to the kind of silence that spoke louder than any defense. Rain ticked against the garage roof like a careful clock. Harold Wexler stood over the workbench, sleeves rolled, dust haloed around him from boxes stacked high with old service logs and faded receipts. The single bulb above flickered once, then held steady. He drew a breath, thin but certain, and opened the metal drawer marked in faint marker Service Records, 6975. Inside lay envelopes, name tags, photographs half-curled from heat. His fingers found one stamped in navy blue Headquarters Alton Air Division. The paper trembled slightly. When he unfolded it, the signature neat and familiar. General Wainwright. He'd almost forgotten the man's handwriting. The letter didn't boast just listed commendations for mechanical precision hours logged aircraft maintained without fail. A proof of diligence, not glory. "Grandpa." The voice came from the doorway. Jake stood there, hoodie half-zipped, holding a flashlight that danced along the cement floor. "You working on something?" Harold smiled faintly, trying to remember where the years went. Jake stepped closer. "Mom says you never tell your stories." "They're mostly about engines and weather," Harold said, closing the drawer halfway. Doesn't make good television. Jake laughed. Still. You did stuff. Everyone at school talks about heroes. I fixed planes, Harold said. They did the flying. That counts. Harold turned toward him, face half-shadowed under the bulb. You think so, Jake nodded earnest. A pause settled just the rain, and a soft hiss of static from the old radio in the corner. Then a voice broke through, thin with interference. And in local news, the town clerk made headlines this morning after joking that half the veterans' badges on display could be bought online. The wrench in Harold's hand froze mid-air. Jake blinked. They said that on radio, Harold set the wrench down slowly. Sounds like it. The announcer continued, but community response has been mixed. Harold clicked the knob off. The silence afterward was heavier than the rain. Jake watched him. That's not right. Harold exhaled long and level. People forget how quiet service can be. The bulb flickered again, brushing light over the drawer's label. The shine caught the edge of a metal badge resting beside the letter, its reflection like a heartbeat on steel. Jake leaned in. What's that one crew patch? Harold said. They gave us these before the last inspection. You kept it all this time, some proofs are worth keeping. He closed the drawer gently. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper. Harold reached for his coat hanging by the door, heavy canvas patched at the shoulder. He buttoned it slow, testing each one like a step remembered. Jake asked quietly. Harold gave a faint smile. One more inspection. The phrase hung between them, not quite an answer, but something stronger. Jake nodded without understanding fully, but the respect in his eyes was clear. Harold patted the boy's shoulder. Lock up after me. Then he stepped into the rain, the letter tucked safe inside his pocket, the sound of it folding like a sealed promise. The courthouse felt smaller that morning, the air heavy with murmurs and the low creak of wooden benches. Harold Wexler stood again beneath the ceiling fan's slow rotation, its blades stirring the stale scent of varnish and paper. He had worn his best coat, the one he used to keep folded in the trunk, and in his pocket, the same paper badge he had shown before. The clerk at the front adjusted her glasses, as though preparing for a performance she already disliked. The judge, younger than most in the room, lifted his eyes from the docket. Mr. Wexler, he said, we're reconvening at your request. Do you have identification today? Harold nodded. Yes, sir. I have what I've always had. He placed the paper badge on the bench in front of him. The faint emblem caught a slant of light from the tall window. Around the room, heads tilted forward. Someone whispered or someone else sighed. The clerk muttered, that same old thing. But her tone sounded weaker this time. The judge leaned closer, curiosity mingling with fatigue. Mr. Wexler, he began, we've been through this. Without official documentation, I can't. The door at the back opened. The sound was soft, yet the entire room turned toward it. A tall man in uniform walked in, metals dulled by age but shining enough to matter. His boots clicked once on the floor before stopping near the first row. Your Honor, he said, his voice even and deliberate, I believe I can speak to this man's record. The judge blinked in surprise. And you are General Thomas Wainwright, the man replied. Retired. I served with Mr. Wexler. He was part of my maintenance division at Alton Air Base. His badge, the one before you, was issued under my command. A hush settled over the crowd. The clerk glanced between them, fingers hovering uncertainly above her keyboard. Sir, she began. We can't simply. But Wainwright had already opened a file envelope from his case and placed it on the bench. Inside lay a letter stamped with the blue crest of the Air Division. The ink faded but unbroken. This document bears my signature, he said. Dated 1975. It confirms Mr. Wexler's service and commendation for precision maintenance. If you compare the signature, you'll find it matches. The judge took the paper carefully, his earlier sharpness replaced by something slower, more respectful. General, this is highly irregular procedure. The older man smiled faintly. Regulation, he said, is often the slowest student of respect. The words seemed to settle deep into the room. For several seconds, no one spoke. Even the hum of the ceiling vent sounded like it was listening. Harold watched the light glint off the edge of his badge once more, that fragile proof of everything done quietly and well. I never asked for ceremony, he said, his voice steady, only accuracy. The judge set down his pen and signed the verification sheet. This court recognizes the validity of your identification and your service record, he said. A small rustle swept through the benches, no applause, only a release of held breath. Harold turned slightly. May from the diner dabbed her eyes, and Jake sat beside her, hands clasped. The general straightened, meeting Harold's gaze. You kept it clean all these years, he said. Seemed worth the polish, Harold replied. Then came the closing line that silenced even thought, but he was pinned by protocol, not by hands. By the following week, Main Street felt different, as if the wind itself carried the sound of someone being quietly vindicated. The courthouse doors opened to a small crowd. Harold Wexler stood in his pressed coat, his cap tucked beneath his arm. The judge waited by the bench, and for the first time there was a hint of a smile on his face. Mr. Wexler, he said, we've corrected the records. Your identification has been reinstated. The clerk approached, holding a small frame in both hands. Inside it lay the same paper badge, the creased emblem of a life measured in service and patience. She extended it toward him carefully. It's been authenticated, sir, she said, and displayed in the courthouse entry right where people can see it. Harold nodded, once eyes steady. Appreciate that, he said, and the simple line seemed to carry more weight than applause ever could. From the gallery, May clapped once before remembering she wasn't supposed to. The judge didn't mind. Jake, sitting beside her, grinned at the sight of the frame. They're keeping it there, he whispered. They are, May said. Took long enough. Then with her familiar diner wit, she added, some paperwork does age well. Jake laughed under his breath. The courtroom eased into a warmth that wasn't official, but was real. Outside sunlight filled the steps where the town's flag moved gently in the breeze. The clerk, who had once frowned over expired dates, now followed Harold out. Mr. Wexler, she said softly. I didn't mean disrespect. I just followed the form. Harold looked at her kindly. So did I, he said. Just a different kind. She nodded, unsure how to answer, and watched him walk down the steps toward May and Jake waiting by the curb. Later that afternoon, May pinned a newspaper clipping to the library board, a small photograph of Harold standing with the general beside the courthouse plaque. The headline read, Local Veteran Service Verified After 40 Years. She smoothed the paper with her hand, then stepped back to look at it. Behind her, the coffee shop radio drifted through the open window, playing a soft brass tune. The steam from her cup curled upward, slow and calm, like the town exhaling. Jake arrived still in his school jacket, eyes wide at the photo. They really put it up. Front page, May said proudly. I told them justice still sells. He chuckled. Guess so. For a moment they stood quietly watching the photograph in the gentle sway of air from the vent. He looks taller there, Jake said. May smiled. Respect can do that. The library door creaked open, and Harold stepped in, nodding to both of them. Thought I'd see what all the fuss was about. Your 15 minutes of fame, May teased. Feels more like 5, he replied, and they shared an easy laugh. Jake moved closer to the board, squinting at the plaque below the photo. Wait, he said after a pause. They misspelled his name. May leaned in. So they did. Harold looked at it and smiled faintly. Guess we'll have to fix that. The steam from the coffee drifted again, the radio hum fading into silence, as the three of them stood together, proof enough that some echoes didn't need noise to last. Evening sunlight stretched long across the courthouse lawn, painting the flagpole gold. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine polish and old paper. The main hallway was quiet, except for the gentle hum of a distant radio somewhere behind the clerk's desk. Harold Wexler stood by the new glass display near the entrance, his reflection faint in the pane. Behind the glass, resting on a dark velvet cloth, lay the paper badge, the same worn emblem that had once been mistaken for a souvenir. Now it looked calm, rightful home. General Wainwright held the small screwdriver steady, while Jake's sleeves rolled, tightened the final bracket. The two worked in slow, careful silence, as if sound might disturb the meaning of what they were fixing in place. That should hold, Jake said. The general checked the frame. Straight as service, he murmured. Jake smiled at that. You sure it's level better than the runway we had in '74, the general said, eyes glinting. Harold chuckled quietly from behind them. You never stop teasing, do you? Only when the job's done, Wainwright replied. They both stepped back, letting Harold come closer. The badge gleamed under the overhead light, edges frayed lettering, soft yet unmistakably proud. Beneath it, a small plaque had been mounted, engraved in careful serif letters, Harold Wexler Service Crew, A11, 1969 to 1975. Some voices don't need rank. Harold read the words once, then again. Didn't think they'd fit all that on one line. They didn't, Jake said, grinning. Took 2. The general smiled. Worth the space. They stood quietly together, watching the case catch the sunset. The light shifted slowly, gold to amber, then to the soft blue of evening. A choir rehearsal from the church across the street drifted faintly through the open window, a low hum, more vibration than song. Jake broke the silence first. So he asked, glancing at his grandfather. The judge asked for your ID. Harold turned toward him with a small, knowing smile. He got it. The line hung there, gentle, complete, and somehow larger than the moment. May appeared at the doorway, still in her diner apron, carrying a thermos. You three look like you're waiting for applause. The general tipped his cap. Not our kind of ceremony, ma'am. She handed Harold the thermos. Brought coffee. Thought you might need something to match the shine. He took it with quiet gratitude. Appreciate it, May. Jake peered again into the display. You think they'll fix the spelling on the courthouse plaque? Harold shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. Doesn't change what's true. He reached out and brushed the flag's edge that hung beside the case, straightening a small fold that had fallen loose. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost ritual. When the fabric settled, he let the case door click shut with a soft final sound, a closing that felt more like beginning. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The porch swing from May's diner creaked once in the cooling air. The choir's hum faded into the evening radio static, the sound neither loud nor lonely, just honest. Harold lingered for a moment longer, then nodded toward the door. Time for supper. Jake followed the general behind him, their steps unhurried, each footfall part of the same quiet rhythm. As they left, the camera lingered on the glass case, the badge steady in its frame, the words below gleaming softly in the dim light. Some voices don't need rank. and beneath that, a final line appeared simple and warm. If this story moved you, share it forward. The courthouse lights dimmed as the evening choir drifted through the open door, soft and uneven like breath after laughter. May's reflection shimmered beside the glass case, Jake standing just behind her, and in the warm glow the paper badge seemed to breathe with its own quiet light. It wasn't the frame or the title that mattered now, but the proof, thin, creased, and shining all the same, speaking louder than any speech could. Outside, Harold Wexler straightened the flag's corner and watched the windows catch the last sun. Somewhere the radio hummed an old march. No one saluted anymore, yet everyone somehow remembered. Micro Echo Post 14. One small proof can steady a town. Kicker, Q12. Some voices don't need rank.